Training camp is closed at Ohio State, but my friends, the market is open. Welcome to The Beat. It is a Stock Watch Wednesday. That is Jeremy Birmingham. I am Austin Ward, and a week and a half to go before the season kicks off. I don't know that there were a ton of surprising names coming out of that second scrimmage, at least not for me, Birm. Maybe you've got more insight. There are some that I will certainly name that are on the rise heading into the opener. But as the, projected depth chart seemed to stabilize, I don't know that there was all that much that we hadn't already anticipated.
No, I don't think that coming out of the scrimmage, I think there were a few names that Ryan Day mentioned on Monday in his press conference that we've talked about it on Snap Judgments and on the live show, but we'll rehash that a little bit here on this episode of The Beat. But I feel like this is the most important stock watch because this is the one where it starts to really turn the corner towards real football. It's not just who's running with the ones, who's banging their heads into who, but who's actually going to help this team starting on September 5th when the Buckeyes host Ball State and then beyond. So it does feel like it's the right time of year to really dive into like who's doing what and why does it actually matter, because there's a lot of names you hear in the spring, but it doesn't really matter until now. So let's see who's making the moves.
Yeah, I think it's interesting to put it into that lens of who were we expecting coming out of spring, who may or may not be in position to do that heading into September 5th. And all that is taken with the caveat that there's a long season ahead of it and plenty can change.
It's the grainiest of grains of salt.
It's a boulder of salt.
Because the reality is, even in the last 3 weeks, there have been a number of things that have shifted. If we go back to the first day of training camp for Ohio State, the first 3 days, the Isaiah West talk has essentially evaporated in the last 2 weeks. And it's not because Isaiah has been inconsistent or whatever, even though, it's Bo Jackson has clearly just decided, hey, I'm not going to allow the conversation to get twisted around what I'm doing or how I'm doing it, because the reviews about Bo Jackson in the last couple of weeks from players, from former players, from peers, from coaches has been decidedly different than it was in the first weekend of training camp. And
stock way up on Bo Jackson.
Stock up. I mean, he has taken the challenge head on and excelled, and that's the guy we could talk about first. But it's maybe not niche enough to talk about on this show as it's expected starter. And
I don't know that there's a ton of stock available. And we mentioned this a couple of weeks ago after those first couple of days of practice where like the national narrative had not caught up on what was happening with Isaiah West, what was going on with Jacoby Jackson, with the reps with the twos for those first 3 days. And so that was an opportunity where maybe the stock had dipped locally, but everybody else was still like just fully enamored with what he did as a true freshman. And that makes sense because running for 1,000 yards at Ohio State for a playoff team in year one is just simply not easy. It doesn't happen all that time.
6.1 yards a carry. I mean, he did everything right a year ago as a first-year guy and got rewarded for it and then got challenged and succeeded with it, apparently. And we'll find out as long as, how that continues to move up heading into the season. But there are other guys who are less obvious that we can discuss. And I know you wanted to start up front.
Yeah, I think it's Gabe Vansickle. And the reviews for him in that second scrimmage were positive from what I was told. You and I didn't see it. We weren't there. We haven't seen any of the actual practices since that third one in camp. But I think, maybe there's this notion that because Austin Serveld is going to right guard, that means Josh Padilla and Gabe Vansickle are not doing things the right way. And, Josh Padilla, I think, is primarily working more at center. I don't know that that's been seamless, at least based on some of the feedback that I've heard.
And it's not unsurprising.
Not surprising.
It's a hard position to play.
Yeah. And,
especially when you haven't done it in a couple
years. And if
you're
Ohio State, you would want to work that out as much as possible. I don't think you've raised this point a number of times, especially with Josh Padilla specifically, that at some point, Carson Hinsman will be gone after this year. And we saw a couple years ago that the backup center had to step in, and that was Carson Hinsman on the way to the College Football Playoff National Championship. So, you want to make sure that you're prepared for that scenario. And if those reps haven't been flawless for Josh Padilla, that's fine. I'm not stocked down on Josh Padilla at center in the future or at guard if need be in the present. I am thinking that Gabe Vansickle deserves more praise for the way that he's played, the way that he's responded to the very rough outing against Miami. There's no way to sugarcoat that. Won't even try to. He was really good against Indiana, and he was showing the progress that I think Ohio State wanted to see. And then, all right, rather than tuck his tail, worked incredibly hard throughout spring camp, delivered a strong set of summer workouts, OTAs, and I think a very good camp based on what I've heard. So that does still give Ohio State the flexibility if need be, and they have to move Austin Birm to tackle for whatever reason that might pop up. I think that there's a lot of confidence that Gabe Vansickle can step in there, and that's not to say that Jake Cook can't or that Josh Padilla couldn't. I think either one of those things would work in some form or fashion, but I think Gabe Vansickle is closer to that right now than I would have imagined maybe a month ago, certainly 8 months ago, and that's worth pointing out.
It is, and because we've seen the last couple seasons happen, and the reality is the offensive line at some point is going to take a shuffle. It's going to need somebody's going to need a week off. There's going to be something that happens. That's just football. I think that a good portion of the conversation around Austin Birm moving to right guard and therefore allowing Philip Daniels and Ian Moore to be your right tackle and left tackle, a part of that conversation is what Ryan Day mentioned on Monday, which is that Carter Lowe has started to look a little bit more the part. And I think he's a guy that in spring, if there were an actual stock market here, a lot of people would have been selling off after the coaches.
Spring was not good.
The coaches' clinic practice, the spring game, he struggled mightily in those opportunities, and that's okay. That's a first, second-year guy getting his first real opportunity to play in front of the fans at Ohio State. Didn't look great, and he didn't. To similar in mindset to Gabe Vansickle, there's no folding. There's no, well, I can't play here. And Ryan Day bringing him up unprompted, talking about the offensive line, saying, hey, we've got other tackles now that maybe they're starting to gain some trust in. That's still not to suggest in any way, shape, or form that if something had to happen, the first move isn't Austin Birm moving back to left tackle.
Yeah, it obviously is.
But in the event that things get wonky down the line, or if there's any sort of chain reaction, Carter Lowe is a guy that is probably not going to play much this season, but there's at least growing confidence. If something were to blow up for Ian Moore and he ends up being a first team All Big Ten and ends up deciding to try the NFL draft waters next year, at least you start to feel a little more confident that you may have the next tackle in Carter Lowe getting there. So I think that that's an important inclusion by Ryan Day on Monday, because it is one of the reasons we've talked so much about the right guard situation, saying, well, maybe it makes more sense to keep Austin at left tackle because you don't know that you have enough tackles ready to play. So it is encouraging that Carter Lowe was mentioned, and I'm not just doing that as a Toledo guy.
You might be. It sounds like you also sprinkled in an Ian Moore bold prediction, or at least teased the possibility of it. That is going to be Three Thoughts Thursday on the beat, by the way, because we still have not got to season-long BPs, and Freaky Friday is still going to be yours, America, and Canada, and maybe that one guy in France.
Tom.
If you're going to send those questions in to
Tom in France.
The Austin Birm Show at gmail.com. Well, or Adam King in Italy, if he wants to send that in.
Is he ever coming back?
I don't know. We'll check and see if he's alive. But that's the Austin Birm Show.
I hope not.
That's only going to fuel this supposed rivalry.
There's no rivalry. We love each other. I just think that he really feels like someone who would fit in well in Italy for the rest of his life.
The Austin and Birm Show at gmail.com. The Austin and Birm Show at gmail.com.
Miss you, Adam.
Also, that inbox,
blowing up.
It's blowing up, and Birm's going the complete other direction.
I'm not blowing up. I'm going down. I'm losing the weight. I'm still losing weight. I checked in this morning, and I was still about a half a pound less than I was 3 days ago when I checked my weight. I'm not checking it every day. Now, I don't have to obsess about it because I know what I need to do, thanks to Awaken 180, who taught me how to think about food different, taught me about eating different, taught me really just to care about what I'm putting into my body, because that is what I'm getting out of my body. Go to awaken180weightloss.com. Start your own recovery to health there.
All right, so I kicked it off with Gabe Vansickle. You followed up on the offensive line. Where would you like to go now?
I'm trying not to be too much a prisoner of the moment when it comes to
these are stocks, man.
But
we're moving and shaking.
Again, it is impossible not to hear what Ryan Day says at the podium. And when he brought up Philip Bell, who is a name that has not been discussed really at all in his time at Ohio State yet, it's pretty encouraging. And then you heard, I recommend if you go to the live show and listen to Bobby Carpenter talk about Philip and the offseason he had, you get a sense of what he's doing right.
Mentality, work ethic.
Bobby said that, is he a better receiver in the slot right now than Brandon Ennis? Probably. That's what he said.
Again, and that's just as a pure you got to take that in the proper context.
Just as a pure receiver, he might have some more wiggle. He might have a little bit more natural inclination in that spot. But obviously there's other things that Brandon has excelled at that allow him to keep, being the guy. But Phillip, I don't know, and maybe this is partially my fault or people who cover the recruiting side of things. I don't think people truly have any idea what that young man went through the summer before his senior season of high school, the things that happened on his official visit to Ohio State, the way that his life completely changed in a 72-hour window. And like, there are people out there who would be in his position, and when things don't go really, really well to start, would just consider this place cursed for him personally. And he's not.
House of Horrors, got to get out of here.
But he has just kept going. He's kept his head down. And again, I don't know what it means. I don't know how that translates to reps. I don't know how that translates to productivity. But I do know that Phillip Bell is a guy that Ohio State quarterbacks love throwing the ball to, especially the California quarterbacks. They really enjoy the connection they have. Phillip was a teammate of Luke Fahey's in high school, just for anyone who's unaware. So whatever it means, I have a tough time not believing that Brock Boyd and Chris Henry are going to play a lot. I don't know if Phillip ends up playing in a rotation with those guys or more than those guys, but when guys are doing the little things and earning the praise of their teammates and of their coaches, and when Ryan Day is mentioning you, it's because you've done something that has caught their attention, and we shouldn't ignore it and just pass it off and say, well, they're not going to play 6 or 7 receivers anyway. They clearly want to, and if that's the case in year 2 for Phillip, like, you start to see the next guy to take that spot, from Brandon Inniss heading into 2027, which I think has to be really encouraging.
Well, I think I'm going to connect the dots, and the previous reference the week before from Ryan Day to Chris Olave making that impact on special teams. I think the person that most clearly applies to is Phillip Bell. Mm-hmm. And correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, I think that there's more similarities between Phillip Bell's size, speed, strength, makeup with Chris Olave than there is Brandon Inniss, despite the, wiggle that he's got, the acceleration. And, I guess we'll see. That seems like a more natural comparison to me. And if I'm overstepping on that, I guess we'll find out as the season goes along. But that's clearly where he's got to make that impact. And I think that can happen. I think in terms of getting on the field as a wide receiver this particular year, those 3 true freshmen are the biggest hindrance to that. And all 3 of them are continuing to have the arrow point up in the right direction. And Jaquaden Guilford, I think he was the biggest beneficiary maybe on Saturday of some of the top end guys not needing to play. But that also applied to Brock Boyd, who I believe had a couple explosives down the field, and Chris Henry Jr. And I want to, it sounds ludicrous, but if you've been following, he is, I don't mean the rapper. I mean,
do you know that Dodge makes a color for their new Chargers? It's called, the name of the color is Bludicrous.
I did not know that.
Yeah, well, now you do.
Well, I'm learning so much this week. I'm glad you were here to educate me on that.
Adam wouldn't have known that. Well, bet you.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. If you put it in perspective of the way I tried to approach Chris Henry Jr. in spring, I want to be, you're taking the 5-star number 1 wide receiver in the country as a stock up, and you're buying some stock. That seems pretty easy. When I said those things in March and April and in spring preview reviews about how unfair it is to compare him to Jeremiah Smith, that's still true.
Yep. Doesn't mean people are going to stop.
But he's also closer to that level than I thought he could be, or that I was willing to entertain in my mind. And I'm not saying expect him to do one-of-one things and start against Texas.
Right.
And I don't think that that's going to happen. But the way that he's transformed physically in just 6 months, you put it in terms, I think during the summer when he got due to the week honors, it's like he doesn't have any of that diva that sometimes you would associate with that position.
But I think there was an assumption that he did based on the way
because of the end of the recruitment. Yeah. And he's disproven any possible notion that you could have that exists for him. With his work ethic, with his practice performance, the productivity, there's never been a time where, someone has expressed to you or me, well, he wants to play that Jeremiah role right away.
Right.
I think he understands the spot that he's in. And maybe that's growing up around the game, the level that he did. I don't know.
You know how much easier it is to take the Jeremiah Smith approach when you're being taught by Jeremiah Smith? You have to. I think that Jeremiah, it's one of those things where we were talking on Saturday about like why, if you took away one of the captains, who would it be? And we were both probably in the sense like it might be Jeremiah because like his impact is so profound that it doesn't really need a title attached to it.
Tim Hall asked me on the radio on Monday, he's like, do you not like Jeremiah Smith? I was like, what are you talking about? Like, I actually love covering Jeremiah Smith. And I said that he belongs to a different planet and a C's not even good enough for him.
No, his impact is so profound that when you are a young guy coming in like Chris Henry Jr., like Phillip Bell, like Brock Boyd, like when you walk in and you see what Jeremiah is doing and you ask yourself, okay, what do I remember? Chris was committed when Jeremiah signed, okay? Like this is a long-term thing. He's seen this path. He's seen the way Jeremiah did it. Like you can't do that and then not follow it.
Yeah.
If you come in here and you start talking crazy talk to Jeremiah Smith, he's going to tell you to shut your mouth and you're going to do it because he's Jeremiah Smith and he is the best football player in college football.
Probably don't want to question him.
So you just see what he does and then you do it. And Chris Henry Jr., from a physical standpoint, is so rare that it's, and Marv changed the tenor and the expectation of things. Mecca did, Garrett did, Jackson did. All these guys have just elevated things so high that to bring it back around to a guy like Phillip Bell, that a normal Ohio State receiver looks pedestrian, and that's just not the case.
Right?
They're not. Phillip Bell is Phillip Bell was a top 5 recruit in the country when the first rankings came out in his class. Like people were like raving about him, and then he gets to Ohio State, and you're like, well, okay, well, he's not Jeremiah Smith, but like that can't be.
We've seen this 100 times.
That can't be the standard. Like, and I know I hear it. The standard is the standard. Jeremiah Smith is not the standard. He is an exceedingly high, well beyond the scope of normalcy. For like
that might be the most compelling argument against the standard being the standard that I've heard yet.
Right, because he is not the standard. Like he can't be the standard. You can't expect everyone to reach that. But these young receivers are getting such a remarkable education from watching Jeremiah, who doesn't have to do this. Jeremiah does not have to be this guy that he is. And I don't know how any receiver, and this goes way back to Terry McLaurin and KJ Hill and Paris Campbell and all these guys that completely changed the block O mindset in zone 6. Like Brandon Ennis is the 3rd Ohio State block O recipient out of 7 who have played wide receiver. Like I'm sorry, the expectation for wide receivers at Ohio State is so different than it is anywhere else. Not because you just expect them to be first round picks, but because they come in and are the leaders of the team, and that just does not happen elsewhere.
Yeah, I mean, LSU's claim to that is the only other argument that really exists.
Right,
that's never been the case for their program. No. They're not led by their wide receivers.
No, they just have had some pretty darn good ones.
Yeah,
but Ohio State's are really darn good. And they're the leaders of the team. And it's such a, that's why like all of the hand wringing when Brian Hartline left, people, is Cortez Hankton going to be able to recruit to Ohio State? Yes, because the players at Ohio State recruit to Ohio State, because you look at them and you go, I want to be like that guy. And that turns out okay.
Wanting to be like Jeremiah Smith and Marvin Harrison and Jackson Smith and Jigba and Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave and Terry McLaurin and KJ Hill. That
makes perfect sense.
Seems like a pretty good strategy.
But you know what most people don't want to be? Will Kazmarek.
Oh.
But that
Bennett Christian does.
Bennett Christian does, and he's another guy we should, and we had Bennett as the cover photo on an episode of The Beat last week, and there was a comment, oh, Bennett's never going to. I don't care what people say.
He pretty clearly is going to play.
Bennett is one of the top 3 tight ends on this team. Bennett is the physical leader of that group. Bennett is the guy that is going to be the watch what I do type. The reviews about Bennett Christian in the last couple of weeks are the reviews of someone whose light has come on officially. And it is a reminder in year 5 for him that is a fairly normal trajectory for a tight end at Ohio State. And you want these the Indiana model, the get old and stay old. Like that's what you need. You need to have grown bleeping men like Bennett Christian at tight end. And he is turning the corner, and Bennett can catch the ball just because he played in a very run heavy offense in high school where he was a glorified 6th offensive lineman. whenever they threw the ball, it was to Bennett Christian. He can catch the ball, and he's huge. And I don't know, man. I know people will have nightmares thinking about the Indiana game and why you're throwing to Bennett Christian in that key moment of the game. But again,
he didn't call the play.
Right. But if you start to circle and connect the dots, and you think about Ohio State and Arthur Smith's coordinating of an offense in the low red zone that involves Chris Henry Jr., Jeremiah Smith, and Bennett Christian on the same side, that's a whole lot of beef, as to quote Ryan Day on Monday.
Yeah. And I think that bringing that up, and I referenced that a week or two ago, it's like I like Bennett Christian to do everything except maybe 3rd and short against Indiana in the Big Ten championship game. Like, that wouldn't have been the play call that I would have dialed up. I don't have the sticks and not even remotely qualified to do that. And I have the benefit of hindsight. It didn't work. But it's emblematic and representative of the issue that plagued that team all year round. A lack of cohesive identity in the red zone, in short yardage scenarios. And that's why Arthur Smith is here. He's brought in to fix that. And maybe that's a different scenario. Maybe that's Bennett Christian more as a blocker. Maybe that's misdirection with the wide receivers. Maybe that's simply leaving the guys that you mentioned on the field. And Brandon Ennis was pretty effective in the big house in a red zone scenario to score a touchdown there on a creative route and concept. Like, I really also sounds like an obvious thing. Like, there's a sense of excitement about what Arthur Smith is doing that applies not just to the guys in the offense who like it, applies not just to the defensive players who've been like, this seems like it's going to be pretty challenging for teams to stop. I think, we've heard from Matt Patricia about how challenging it is to match wits with him every Saturday, every scrimmage opportunity. So, like, I think that's going in the right direction. And I guess it's mixing a bold P and
I was just going to say, I don't know the format for Thursday's show for bold predictions, but I'm going to put one out there now.
Okay.
That Bennett Christian will have more touchdowns receiving than any Ohio State tight end this season.
Well, that is a stock way up for Bennett Christian. We'll count that. And then it'll be a teaser into a 3 Thoughts Thursday, which is actually turning into season-long bold P. So we'll have our 3 spiciest bits of pepper ready for that. We'll work it up. And then we will be prepared for your questions on Friday, Freaky Friday mailbag. That you can send those into the Austin and Birm Show at gmail.com. Later on Wednesday, a Woody Wednesday, we will hear from all 7 captains, and we will react to that with some snappy J's as we're almost into actual game week rhythm.
It's so great.
Yeah.
It's so great. We hope you've enjoyed it. We hope you've enjoyed the off season. We appreciate your help in getting through it. So, let's dive into the season.
All right. So looking forward to your questions, looking forward to getting back in the Woody, and looking forward to the start of game week, which is going to be kicking off on Monday. So we're almost there, folks. Thanks for joining us for a Wednesday Stock Watch on the Beat. He's Birm. I'm Austin. See ya.